Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video from the Grand Tour 2026. This is week 11. We're having a great time traveling across the southeastern U.S. This week we are in Louisville, Kentucky, and just south of that actually, staying at Camp Carlson Recreational Area, which is part of Fort Knox, belongs to Fort Knox. Great little family camp. And reasonable, and it was a great place to stay for our week. And so we've got lots of cool things to show you this week. First off, we went on a riverboat ride on an authentic steam-driven paddle boat, the last one of its kind in the United States, running its original steam system, boilers and piston assemblies from over 100 years ago. It's amazing stuff. Had a good time on that. After that, we're going to go visit the Jim Beam distillery. It's close by. And maybe the Kentucky Railroad Museum. And after that, the last thing that you're going to see video about this week is our visit to the General George S. Patton Jr. Museum that is on board Fort Knox. That's the schedule for this week. Let's get started. Listen, hey, if you're here, please, if you like the video, please give it a like, a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with your friends. All those things help our channel to grow, and we appreciate you so much. Let's get started. Well, this is the fun we have in store for today. Going for a ride on the steamer. Well, I wasn't expecting a Mexican food buffet on a river boat, but why not? $112 old, the longest continuing operating steamboat in the history of the U.S. Still moving under its original power. It's about 90 degrees today, and the humidity is really up, and so most folks are choosing for the shade. Plenty of room out here, though, if you want some sun. We're on the Ohio River. To the right of us is Kentucky, where we're staying right now, and on the other side of the river, not very far apart, are both Indiana and Ohio. You can go a little ways downriver, you get to West Virginia. And it's a big river. It's not the Mississippi, but it's pretty close. Oh, here comes a pretty lady. Well, friends, we had a great time on the Belle of Louisville, a steam-powered paddle boat, riverboat, still running under its original propulsion plant. It's over 100 years old. It was pretty amazing, actually, and the food was good. The service was great. We had a nice cruise up and down the Ohio River for a couple of hours. Very relaxing. If you get to Louisville, check out the Belle of Louisville. It's absolutely worth the price of admission for a ride. They go out pretty much every day. I think you'll enjoy it. And then we're on to the next thing. Let's see what it is. Well, today in our adventures in Fort Knox, we got a twofer. We went to the Jim Beam distillery, the home of Jim Beam, where they bottle much of their bourbon and lots of other bourbons, as it turns out. They own a multitude of brands these days. And we got to take the big tour, and Lynn got to participate in the bottling of a bottle of Knob Creek, which she sealed the wax on the top with her thumbprint, and then the bottle was engraved. That was all very cool. And on our way back from there, we made a quick stop at the Kentucky Railroad Museum to see what they had. And so that'll be right after you get done seeing Jim Beam stuff. We're going to be at the Railroad Museum for a little bit. And that would be it for this day. Let's go check out Jim Beam.
Barley. This corn is the grain most responsible for that sweet flavor in bourbon. Our rye is contributing those cooking and baking spice notes. So if you have a high rye bourbon or just a straight rye whiskey, anything, it's a little peppery. That's the rye getting to work. Now this barley does not do so much for flavor, but it does contribute an enzyme that converts the starches from the corn into sugar during fermentation. So each day we're getting about 15 trucks of grain, and we're testing those trucks in 6 different spots. We're testing for moisture content and breakage. If even one piece of grain doesn't meet our standards, we give the whole truck away. That usually doesn't happen. So we then take that grain and run it through a hammer mill. These are obviously very small scales compared to what we actually use, but we're milling that grain down into a finer consistency. This corn is kind of chunky like chicken feed, and then this barley gets down into a floury consistency. We're then going to cook that milled grain with our limestone water for about 2 to 3 hours. That cooked grain is called mash. That mash will now be put inside one of our 45,000-gallon fermentation tanks. But before we can ferment, we need one last ingredient. Yeast, you got it. So we really love yeast here at Beam. We also really love Cadillacs. This right here, y'all can kind of mosey on this way, make some room for everybody. This right here is the same make and model of Cadillac that Jim drove in the 1930s. He was one of the first people in the state to drive a Cadillac. But post-prohibition, Jim needed a yeast strain to start distilling with again. So he set out in his backyard in Bardstown, Kentucky, and he caught a few different yeast strains until he found one that he couldn't live without. So to keep that yeast safe from theft or fire or natural disaster, Jim would carry that yeast with him everywhere. He carried it in this copper jug. They say that if you rode with me, you were in the back seat because his yeast was always shot down with the seatbelt around it. And his wife said that he would sit it with them at the kitchen table for dinner each night. Now, I don't know if y'all know the smell of yeast, but I don't think it would make a great dinner guest. Century English term, because 5 wine bottles equal 1 gallon. The second is that during Prohibition, some folks were given permission to distill for religious purposes, so they would claim to be making church wine, which might not have always been the truth, but a wine gallon is a regular gallon by volume. Now, there's a whole bunch of pipes in here. This one behind me is labeled mash. That's how that mash travels from the grain cooker into the fermentation tanks. This green one right here is labeled RO water. Now when we proof that distillate down, we're not proofing with limestone water because it's sweet. At this point, we don't want to change the flavor profile. So we proof down with that reverse osmosis water, which is very pure and it won't change the taste. We're going to mosey on out. I know it's warm in here. We'll head to Big House where our column still is. Of that will be any single barrel bourbon, and about 0.5% of that will be Knob Creek single barrel bourbon. So there's not a lot of it. I'm going to ask for another volunteer. We're going to catch some of that bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Interesting. Send it to me.
I got it.
Does it matter which one
Nope.
it is?
Good hard press. Perfect. Either one, yeah. Either one. For us, these bottles are being rinsed out one more time. We don't use air to rinse because that could introduce particles. We're not rinsing with water because that could proof the bourbon down. At the end of the barrel, there's not quite enough left to bottle. That's what they're using to rinse with. They'll test that periodically and make sure it's at 120 proof. If it dips below, they'll replace it. Doesn't happen often. Once these bottles are rinsed, they move on down to be filled.
Yours is first. Ours is the first bottle.
Larger bottling lines move at about 200 place to bring guests. It's so slow you can actually see what's going on. At larger lines, we use pressure to fill their bottles, but because we're not in any hurry, we just use gravity. This is one of the oldest pieces of machinery on the line. It's been here since the early 1960s, which makes it older than our column still. This level right here tells us about how many bottles are left in that barrel. We're at just under 100 right now. Once they are filled, they move on down to be corked. We use synthetic corks now because after a few decades of collectors letting their bottles sit on the shelf, that natural cork starts to disintegrate. Actually, back at Outpost on the second floor, we have some really old bottles on display, and you can see the corks in there decaying. Once those bottles are corked, they move on down to be labeled. They'll get 2 on the front and 1 on the back. Y'all can look closer at this part. I just ask that those of you who got bottles stay close to these barrels here.
Is the twisting help to seal it?
No, ma'am, that's actually putting the label on. Every time it spins, it's applying a label. It's putting 3 labels on.
Now, at the end of the barrel, all bottles of Knob Creek have a wax seal on them, but here in T-Line, we are hand dipping that wax just for tour guests. Here we have Devin doing that. He's been practicing really hard, so be nice to him.
I'll do my best. We're going to start with a full tab on the top. Makes it easier to get the dry wax later. So we'll do a few dips in the wax, and then I'm going to chill it. That'll get it to set up quick. It also involves seeing that Knob Creek logo in front of it. Alright, one more dip on the very top. Now we just so y'all can personalize it right over the plate.
LT. Alright, so you will go straight down and hold there for 3 or 4 seconds. So yeah, when you're done, you just lift straight up. Perfect. Love it.
So we're here at the Kentucky Railroad Museum, and this is one of the trains that they use for excursions. They don't look super pretty, but they do get them out almost every day of the week on some kind of a run or another. And at the back end of this one is an old Santa Fe 2546. This one has a great history. The engine in this train was built by EMD and shipped to the Navy, who put it in an LST, a type of landing craft, where it served for all of World War II. After the war, the LST was decommissioned. They shipped the engine back to EMD, and they put it in this locomotive they were building, and then sent it off to Santa Fe as an F7 locomotive. Used mostly in passenger service for Santa Fe, and then it went to some shops and got converted to a CF7, which meant they reconfigured it for freight service. And it did that until 1985. And then it came to the Kentucky Railroad Museum, and it's been running here ever since. That engine was built early in World War II, 1942 or 3. And here it goes, still every day. Pretty awesome. While we stayed in the Louisville area, we were down at Camp Carlson, which is part of Fort Knox. Nice little family camp that we enjoyed being at. Also on Fort Knox, besides, the really well-guarded stone building full of precious metals. I couldn't get a tour of that, by the way. Don't know what was up with that. But anyway, also there is the museum that's all about General George S. Patton Jr. Fascinating character. There's much to study and love about our history, and in World War II in particular. I was not a big fan of history when I was in school, but as I have grown older, I've become more a fan of it, and in particular the first half of the 20th century, which was before I was born, in case you're wondering. The two standout figures for me from World War II are Patton and Werner von Braun. And so we had to go see the Patton Museum. It was very good. There was a lot there. It took a lot longer to get through it than we thought it would. But it was very good, and we enjoyed it. And so here's some pics and videos from that visit to the Patton Museum. And I'm foreshadowing here, but you may, in the weeks ahead, hear something about Werner von Braun. Who knows? Let's go to the Patton Museum. Well, friends, that wraps up our week in the Louisville area, staying at Fort Knox or next to Fort Knox and its camp. Really enjoyed it. Great city, so much to see and do. And we're moving on now to our next place. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for watching the videos. Thank you for your likes and subscribes and sharing it with others who may also enjoy our content. We'll be back next week with another new video from our next location, which is going to be fabulous as well. Thanks so much for being with us. Be well. Take care. God bless.